One of the questions I'm often asked is why I became right-winged. See, growing up as a little lad, in Scotland and Britain, in Europe, I remember multiculturalism was something that was quaint and cute. There was no debate over it. There was no question as to whether we wanted to sacrifice parts of our culture for others. See, the problem is, in Europe and the UK, even though the troubles the continent's had for millennia, bit of an overstatement, but decades, centuries, whatever, there was already a shared culture, a European Christo-Judaic culture. People in London admired French fashion. People in Italy admired British industrialism. People across the European continent, despite being divided by political ideologies, shared a common culture and appreciation, even a line of cooperation among scientists and culturalists. Multiculturalism came in the wake of Tony Blair's Labour left-wing government, the same government that also bombed and massacred Iraq. I remember people trying to crush any concern that this multiculturalism could only lead to a worse state of society. But now I'm not too sure they were wrong. See, before people coming to the UK would adapt and integrate, look at Scotland, a country made up of the Picts, the Celts, and the Saxons, along with the Vikings and Druids. Various cultures that became one identity, a boiling pot that mixed together to form its national identity that we have now. Unique in different parts, but fundamentally Scottish. The same was for the Irish who came to England. Places like Liverpool, the shipyards. They integrated, they became part of society. But nowadays, there's no need to integrate. Muslims come over and they preserve their culture. The same for immigrants from across Europe. The problem is, a continent without sovereign rights, without the sovereignty of borders, can only lead to destruction because whether people like to accept it or not, fundamentally humans prefer their own culture. We find it cute that certain cultures may do certain things, but beyond that we wouldn't want to change the way we are. The same can be said for people in Saudi Arabia and across the Middle East. I wouldn't want to change their culture. I don't care what they do as long as it doesn't interfere with my way of life. But now it is. The Islamists became something more than a silent majority. They've suppressed the media. They've destroyed freedom of speech. They've turned the government into a spineless, ballless mass of apologetics. We sacrifice the very thing that we fought against many decades ago when that was defense of Europe against tyranny. We've replaced the tyranny of weapons and fear with the tyranny of fear and the silence of any free speech. A continent like Europe, famed for its liberalism and its sensible ideologies for the most part, has now become a vacuum of fear where any culturalism aside from the outsider minority, is slowly but surely being crushed out of our native peoples. And I have no problem, for people coming from other parts of the world to make a better life, but I do not agree that they get an easy life, because in the same way that people born into this country are not guaranteed an easy life, compared to others of the 1%, the people who come to this country should not be guaranteed a better life of the 1%. See, the country I come from believes in hard work. It believes that people can make their fortunes through determination and education. And that has slowly been stripped away. This idea that people can come to the UK for whatever reason and get a job and take away from my people's opportunity. It sickens me. And one of the reasons I turned into the right is because the right-winged were right all the time. They seen what multiculturalism was going to become, and we thought they were foolish for it. We thought they were being silly. And here it is, 10 years later. Nothing we've ever seen before has ever amounted to this. Have you ever known a part in society where not a single shot has been fired, and yet people are suppressed? They are anguished into silence, into the status quo. See, the problem is these multiculturalism and the leftists have taken Orwellian fantasy and turned it into a guide on how to run a populace. I would say we're less than 20 years away from thought crimes being a genuine thing. Already in the UK, it's very difficult to express concern against a foreign nation without offending someone or without being on the police radar. And I've nothing against those of other religions and other cultures, as long as they accept my people's way of life and my people's society that we have built up for thousands of years. See, being a Scot, I know what it's like to be an oppressed minority. It happens to us in the UK, but instead of feeling sorry for ourselves, for the most part, we rise up. We are the people who gave an age of technology, an age of inquisitive adventure, enlightenment, religious freedom. And the reward for that is that people feel we should be ashamed of our culture. Turncoats, as we'd call them, who feel that Scottish culture, UK culture, English culture, especially English culture, should be wiped out. For what crimes? This generation hasn't done anything but to try to assist those of the other world. No longer do we have an empire to say that we're stealing resources from. We open our commonwealth. We ensure that there's stability and peace throughout the world. And in return, people make us ashamed of our own people. See, being white isn't a crime. The reason that people from Europe became so powerful was by potluck chance and also by our ideologies. See, Christianism, instead of the Christian belief, Christianism, as I like to call it, the overall arcing teachings of Jesus, and that comes from an atheist, is one of freedom and poverty. The idea that no man should holster to gold. See, that's the problem with Islam. Certain departments, as you were, of Islam, Shia, Sunni, whatever, their religion spawns from a warlord of conquest, not of poverty, not of preaching fellowship, but of conquest. Never has Europe faced such a fierce and dangerous enemy as these newcomers. And they're not our enemy, because we had our turn in empire. It's human spirit to conquest what is there for the taking. The true enemy are the politicians who allow it to happen. These people keep their hardline beliefs because they're allowed to. You take a child and you raise him to be a good operational member of society, as the populace normally are, and most Muslims up until recently were. Then they will continue to do that without knowing the difference. See, in my local town, and I'm not going to say it because doxing and all that shit, they're Muslims, but they speak with a Scottish accent. They drink iron brew. They eat haggis. Some of them even go to the pub. And why? Because they don't allow their religion to define who they are. They are individuals who belong to our culture. They're trying to make it better. And then you see people who come in and they refuse any bars. They refuse to give any space. They must have their culture. And if they want to keep portions of their culture, then so be it. But only the parts that are beneficial to mine. So long as they're in this kingdom and in this land, they must obey by our laws. That is the way society has operated for millennia. Not just modern, not just the age of written history, but throughout the entirety of humankind. As social creatures, we survived on that prospect. By unity through cooperation, not diversion through incorporation. Europe is slowly being eroded. It's being corroded. Its very spine is being snapped under these political antics. And what do we sacrifice in the long run? When is too far too far? This precedent that we set is dangerous. And I truly do fear for the world we'll be in 50 years' time. One that will either see bloodshed against all Muslims and outsiders, deserve it or not, or one where the natural born patriots of Europe die. And I'm no way extreme right wing, but even I fear this vision of Europe. And it's slowly becoming reality. Look at Germany. Look what's happened to the women during New Year's. A time of celebration, for Christ's sake. Look at Sweden, for Christ's sake. Once seen as a paradise. Who the hell would want to see that happen to their nation? A nation cuckolded by its own politicians and so suppressed from free speech that it's become nothing more than a limerick of dangerous ideologies and borderline Nazi ideology of suppression. And just remember this. The reason I turn to the right is because the right are nowhere near dangerous as the left. The right will make it apparent what they want to do. And if you want to stop them, then fair enough. But the left are serious, dangerous. They cower in the shadows and double-speak. How stupid a society we are to allow that to become the norm. We sacrifice our own culture for a little bit of convenience from the left, instead of the hard-pressing nature that the world really is that's presented by the right. My God, we're all doomed.